The sky turned dark over every city on Earth at exactly the same moment. It was not an eclipse. It was not a storm. It was something far worse. Massive ships appeared above the planet. They were so large that they blocked out the sun. The smallest of them was bigger than any building humans had ever made. The largest one, floating directly above the Atlantic Ocean, was the size of a small moon. Its shadow covered half of Europe. People stopped in the streets. Cars crashed as drivers looked up in shock. Children pointed at the sky while their parents stood frozen with fear. Every phone, every television, every computer screen flickered and went black. Then a face appeared on all of them. The creature was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone. Its eyes were completely black, without any white in them. It had no nose, just two small holes in the center of its face. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "I am High Arbiter Zithran of the Velkari Dominion," the creature said. "Your species has been discovered. You are the 213th civilization we have found. Like all others before you, you will now join the Dominion." The alien paused. Its black eyes seemed to look directly at every human watching. "You will kneel. You will surrender your worlds. You will serve the Dominion for all time. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is your only option." Zithran raised one long, thin hand toward the sky. "You have 7 of your days to accept. If you refuse, you will be erased from existence. Every man, woman, and child. Every city. Every memory of your kind. It will be as if you never existed at all." The screens went dark again. Then they returned to normal, showing the regular programs. But nobody was watching anymore. Everyone was looking at the sky. Within hours, the aliens proved they were not bluffing. They pointed a single weapon at Earth's moon and fired. A beam of blue light shot across space. When it hit the moon, a piece the size of France simply vanished. It did not explode. It did not break apart. It was just gone, leaving a massive crater that humans could see with their bare eyes. The message was clear. The Velkari could destroy anything they wanted. The leaders of Earth gathered in an emergency meeting. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists from every nation sat in one room. They had been enemies just days ago. Now they faced something that made their old conflicts seem like children fighting over toys. General Marcus Webb stood before them with grim news. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars, but he had never felt fear like this. "Our entire military force," he said slowly, "every ship, every weapon, every soldier on Earth, and all our colony worlds combined, we are outnumbered 500 to 1. Their smallest ships have shields our weapons cannot penetrate. Their weakest guns can destroy our strongest vessels in a single shot." The room was silent. Some leaders lowered their heads. Others wiped tears from their eyes. A few began typing messages to their families, saying goodbye. "So we surrender," said the president of the European Federation. His voice was hollow and defeated. "We have no choice." But then a woman stood up. She was Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Coalition Navy. She was small, with short black hair and eyes that burned with something the aliens had not expected to see in humans. Defiance. "Before we give up," she said calmly, "I have a question. Has anyone asked why the Velkari have never lost a war?" The room looked at her with confusion. "What do you mean?" asked General Webb. "They have thousands of ships. They have weapons we cannot even understand. That is why they have never lost." Admiral Tanaka shook her head. "No. I have been studying their transmissions since they arrived. They showed us recordings of their past conquests. 212 species, they said. I watched every recording." She walked to the center of the room. Every single species surrendered within hours of the Velkari arriving. Some surrendered within minutes. Not one of them fought back. Not one of them even tried. The leaders looked at each other, not understanding. "The Velkari have ruled for 3,000 years, Tanaka continued. They have conquered 212 civilizations, but they have never actually fought a war. They show up with their big ships and their powerful weapons, and everyone just gives up." She let that sink in. They have never faced an enemy that refused to kneel. They have no idea what to do if someone says no. A murmur went through the room. For the first time since the ships appeared, Something other than fear showed on some faces. It was small. It was fragile. But it was there. Hope. "You are suggesting we fight?" asked the Chinese premier. "Against ships that can erase moons?" "I am suggesting," Admiral Tanaka said, "that those ships have never been tested. Those weapons have only been fired at targets that could not shoot back. Those soldiers have never faced an enemy willing to die rather than surrender." She looked around the room at every leader. "Yes, they might destroy us. Yes, we might all die. But we will die anyway if we kneel. The Velkari do not keep slaves forever. They use them until they are broken, and then they throw them away. I have seen it in their own records." General Webb stepped forward. His tired eyes now held a spark of something new. "She is right," he said. "If we surrender, we die slowly as slaves. If we fight, we might die quickly. But we might also win. And even if we lose, we will make them bleed. We will make them remember us." The debate lasted for hours. Some argued for surrender. Some argued for negotiation. But in the end, when the vote was called, the result was clear. Humanity would not kneel. Admiral Tanaka was given command of all human military forces. She had 7 days to prepare for a war against an enemy that had never known defeat. On the 7th day, High Arbiter Zithran appeared on every screen again. His black eyes were calm and cold. He expected to hear the words of surrender. He expected to see humans on their knees. "People of Earth," he said, "your time is finished. Speak your submission." The screens flickered. Admiral Tanaka's face appeared, replacing the alien's image. She looked directly into the camera. Her voice was steady and clear. "This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Coalition. I speak for all of humanity." She paused for just a moment. "No." That was all she said. One word. Then the transmission ended. In his command chamber aboard the massive flagship, High Arbiter Zithran stared at the blank screen. For 3,000 years he had served the Dominion. He had overseen the conquest of 47 species himself. He had heard countless surrender speeches, countless pleas for mercy, countless begging and crying, and promises of loyalty. He had never heard that word before. No species had ever said it. His aide approached nervously. "High Arbiter, what are your orders?" Zithran did not answer immediately. He was feeling something strange, something he had not felt in centuries. It took him a moment to recognize what it was. Uncertainty. He pushed the feeling aside. These humans were just animals. Like all the others. They would learn their place. They would kneel or they would die. "Begin the cleansing," he ordered. "Destroy their outer colonies first. Let them watch their worlds burn. They will surrender soon enough." But as his fleet began to move, Zithran could not shake the strange feeling in his chest. For the first time in his long life, he was not certain of victory. And somewhere deep in his ancient mind, a small voice whispered that the Dominion had finally made a terrible mistake. The first human colony to fall was New Helsinki on the planet called Haven. It was a peaceful world of farmers and miners, home to 3 million people. The Velkari fleet arrived at dawn. By sunset, the entire colony was ash. The survivors sent one final message before the communication towers fell. It was a video showing ordinary people, men and women and children, standing together and singing their national anthem as fire rained from the sky. They knew they were going to die. They chose to die standing. That video spread across every human world. It was meant to break humanity's spirit. Instead, it did something the Velkari could not understand. It made humans angry. 3 more colonies fell in the first month of the war. The Velkari moved from world to world, burning everything. Their strategy was simple: show humanity enough death, and they would beg for mercy. It had worked on every other species. It had worked for 3,000 years. But humans did not beg. They did not surrender. With every colony that burned, more volunteers joined the military. Factories that had made cars started making weapons. Scientists who had studied medicine started studying how to kill aliens. Grandmothers learned to shoot. Children packed supplies for soldiers. Admiral Tanaka watched the death tolls rise and felt the weight of every life on her shoulders. But she also saw something else in the reports. Something the Velkari had not noticed yet. Humans were learning. In the first battles, human ships were destroyed in seconds. Their weapons did nothing against Valkyrie shields. Their tactics were useless against enemies who had conquered galaxies. But the humans who survived those battles brought back information. They brought back pieces of destroyed alien ships. They brought back recordings of how the enemy fought. Dr. Elena Vasquez was a physicist who had spent her life studying stars. Now she spent her days in a secret laboratory, taking apart alien technology and figuring out how it worked. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night since the war began. Her eyes were red and her hands shook from too much coffee, but her mind was sharper than ever. Their shields are not magic, she told Admiral Tanaka one night. They use a specific energy frequency. If we can match that frequency and disrupt it, we can get through. Within 2 weeks, human weapons could damage Valkyrie ships. Not destroy them, not yet, but damage them. It was a start. The aliens noticed. For the first time, they were losing ships. Not many, just 1 or 2 in each battle. But they were used to losing 0. High Arbiter Zythrin received the reports with growing frustration. "How are these primitives hurting our vessels?" he demanded. His generals had no answer. In 3,000 years, no conquered species had ever improved this quickly. Most species became weaker after invasion, their spirits broken, their will to fight crushed. These humans seemed to get stronger with every defeat. "They are adapting," said one of his advisors, a young officer named Kethral. "They study our tactics and change theirs. They capture our technology and copy it. They are learning from their losses." "Impossible," Zythrin snapped. "Primitive species cannot adapt to Dominion warfare. It has never happened." "Perhaps," Kethral said carefully, "it has never happened because no primitive species has ever tried." Zythrin dismissed the comment. These humans would break eventually. They always did. But the humans kept fighting. They developed new tactics that the Valkyrie had never seen. Small groups of soldiers would board enemy ships through maintenance hatches, fighting room by room, destroying vessels from the inside. It was messy and brutal, and many humans died doing it. But it worked. Captain James Okonkwo became the first human hero of the war. He was a young man from Nigeria with a quick smile and a faster mind. When his cruiser was damaged beyond repair during the Battle of Proxima, he did something the Valkyrie thought was impossible. He aimed his dying ship at the enemy flagship and accelerated to full speed. "All hands, abandon ship," he ordered calmly. "Get to the escape pods. I will handle the rest." His crew begged him to come with them. He refused. "Someone has to steer," he said simply. "Go. Tell them we did not kneel." His cruiser hit the enemy dreadnought at maximum velocity. The explosion created a chain reaction that destroyed 12 Valkyrie warships in a single moment. It was the largest enemy loss in 1,000 years. Captain Okonkwo died instantly, but his name would be remembered forever. The Battle of Proxima changed everything. It proved that humans could win. Not easily, not without sacrifice, but they could win. News of the battle spread beyond human space. Other species heard about it. The Kreth, an insectoid race that had served the Dominion as slaves for centuries, whispered the story in their underground tunnels. The Yilani, an aquatic people forced to build Valkyrie ships, shared it through their telepathic networks. For the first time in generations, the conquered species felt something they had forgotten existed. Hope. "Did you hear?" a Kreth worker asked another in the darkness of a mining colony. "The new species, the humans, they fight back. They will be destroyed," the other replied. "Everyone who fights is destroyed." "Maybe, but they have not been destroyed yet. They keep fighting." The word spread. Humans, the species that said no, the species that would not kneel. Admiral Tanaka did not know it yet, but humanity's defiance was planting seeds throughout the Dominion. Seeds that would grow into something the Valkyrie could not imagine. On the Valkyrie homeworld, High Arbiter Zythrin studied the casualty reports with growing concern. The losses were still small compared to the Dominion's total fleet, but they were growing. Every month, humans killed more of his soldiers. Every month, they captured more technology. Every month, they got better at fighting. "Perhaps we should offer terms," suggested one of his council members. "Let them keep some of their worlds in exchange for submission. Other species have accepted such arrangements. No, Zithrin said firmly. If we show weakness now, every conquered species will think they can resist us too. We must destroy humanity completely. We must make them an example. He ordered the fleet to be tripled. Ships were pulled from across the Dominion, leaving other regions undefended for the first time in centuries. Everything would be focused on crushing these stubborn humans. In 6 months, Zithrin declared, there will be no more humans. Their worlds will be dust. Their names will be forgotten. The galaxy will remember what happens to those who defy the Dominion. His officers saluted and went to carry out his orders. None of them noticed that his hands trembled slightly as he dismissed them. Zithrin stood alone in his command chamber, looking at the stars through the massive windows. Somewhere out there, humans were building weapons to kill his people. Somewhere out there, slaves were whispering about rebellion. Somewhere out there, the order he had spent his whole life protecting was beginning to crack. They are just animals, he said to himself. Just another primitive species. They will break. They always break. But even as he spoke the words, he no longer believed them. 6 months later, when the largest fleet in Dominion history arrived at Earth, they found something waiting for them. Not the broken, starving humans they expected. Not the ruined civilization ready to surrender. They found a species that had spent 6 months preparing. A species that had built weapons they could not have imagined. A species that was ready to fight. And in that moment, High Arbiter Zithrin understood what his advisor had tried to tell him. The Dominion had not been undefeatable for 3,000 years because they were the strongest. They had been undefeatable because no one had ever really tried to beat them. Until now. 2 years into the war, something changed. Humanity stopped running. Dr. Elena Vasquez had not just copied Velkari technology. She had improved it. Human scientists took alien inventions and combined them with human creativity in ways the Dominion had never seen. The Velkari had used the same weapons for 1,000 years. Why change something that worked? But humans changed everything, constantly, looking for any small advantage. The Prometheus Array was humanity's greatest achievement. It was a network of satellites that could create a field of unstable energy across vast distances. When Velkari ships entered the field, their engines would shake apart. Their shields would fail. Their weapons would explode in their own hands. The aliens had nothing like it. They had never needed anything like it. When the massive Dominion fleet arrived at Earth, Admiral Tanaka was waiting. She had spent 6 months preparing this moment. Every ship was in position. Every weapon was ready. Every soldier knew this battle would decide the future of humanity. They outnumber us 3-1, her aide reported. Over 10,000 warships. Tanaka nodded calmly. Activate the Prometheus Array. The battle lasted 17 days. It was the bloodiest fighting humanity had ever seen. Ships exploded by the hundreds. Millions died on both sides. The space around Earth became a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. But when it was over, humanity still stood. High Arbiter Zithrin fled with the remains of his fleet. Of the 10,000 ships he had brought, fewer than 2,000 escaped. It was the worst defeat in Dominion history. It was the first time the Velkari had ever truly lost. And it was just the beginning. Admiral Tanaka did not celebrate the victory. She knew the war was not over. But she also knew something had changed forever. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. Now they were fighting to win. We push forward, she told her commanders. We do not give them time to recover. We take the fight to their territory. Human fleets began striking Dominion outposts beyond the Sol system. They used tactics the Velkari could not predict. Small groups of fast ships would appear suddenly, destroy supply stations, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Admiral Tanaka called it the Wolf Pack Doctrine. Strike fast, strike hard, never fight fair. The Dominion had no answer. Their military was built for overwhelming force, not quick adaptation. Their commanders followed rules that had not changed in centuries. They could not understand enemies who broke all the rules. Marcus Webb, who had once been just an intelligence analyst, now commanded his own assault team. He led soldiers in raids on enemy bases, capturing technology and freeing slaves. He had seen too much death to feel joy anymore. But he felt something like purpose. We are not just fighting for humanity. he told his troops before one mission. We are fighting for everyone the Dominion has ever crushed, every species that was forced to kneel, every world that was burned. We fight for all of them. His words spread. Other species began to believe that maybe, just maybe, the Dominion could be defeated. The Kreth were the first to openly rebel. They were insect-like creatures who had been slaves for 800 years, forced to mine dangerous minerals in conditions that killed thousands every month. When they heard about humanity's victories, something awakened in them. A Kreth worker named Clicktack started the uprising. She sabotaged a mining drill, causing it to explode and destroy an entire Velkari processing facility. The Dominion executed her publicly, hoping to scare the other Kreth into obedience. Instead, her death sparked revolution. Within weeks, Kreth workers across a dozen worlds had risen up. They had no weapons, so they used their mining tools. They had no training, so they learned through failure. Thousands died, but thousands more kept fighting. The Yilani were next. They were aquatic beings with powerful telepathic abilities, used by the Dominion to coordinate fleet communications. When they decided to resist, they did not fight with weapons. They simply stopped working. Without Yilani telepaths linking their ships together, Velkari fleets became confused and disorganized. Then the Morthak joined, and the Sylvanis, and the Genkari, species that had been enemies under Dominion rule, now united against their common oppressor. They sent messages to humanity, offering alliance. Admiral Tanaka accepted everyone. The Coalition of Free Worlds was born in a conference room on Earth. Representatives from a dozen species sat together for the first time as equals. They had different bodies, different languages, different cultures, but they all wanted the same thing: freedom. We were alone when this war started, Tanaka told them. We are alone no longer. Together, we will break the chains the Dominion has placed on all of us. Together, we will build something new. The coalition grew stronger every month. Human technology spread to allied species. Allied species shared knowledge with humans. Together, they developed weapons and tactics that neither could have created alone. High Arbiter Zithran watched his empire crumble from his throne room. Reports came in daily of lost battles, lost worlds, lost soldiers. Rebellions spread faster than he could crush them. For every uprising he destroyed, 2 more began. This cannot be happening, he said to his remaining council. We are the Dominion. We have ruled for 3,000 years. We cannot be defeated by slaves and primitives. But the evidence was undeniable. The Dominion was losing. Kethral, the young advisor who had warned about human adaptation, spoke carefully. High Arbiter, perhaps it is time to consider alternatives. The war is not going well. Our resources are stretched thin. Our people are afraid. You suggest surrender? Zithran's voice was dangerous. I suggest negotiation. Peace. Let the humans and their allies have their freedom. Focus on protecting what remains of the Dominion. Zithran rose from his throne, his ancient body trembling with rage. I have served the Dominion my entire life. I have conquered 47 species. I will not be remembered as the one who surrendered to animals. He ordered the execution of any advisor who mentioned peace again. But his orders no longer carried the weight they once had. Officers hesitated to follow commands that led to death. Soldiers deserted rather than face human weapons. The fear that had held the Dominion together for millennia was cracking. On Earth, Marcus Webb received a message from a captured Velkari officer. The alien wanted to defect. He was tired of fighting for a cause he no longer believed in. Why should we trust you? Webb asked. The alien looked at him with those black eyes that had once seemed so terrifying. Because I have seen what your species can do. You were supposed to be weak. You were supposed to break. But you did not. You became stronger. He paused. The High Arbiter does not understand this. He thinks you are lucky. He thinks we will win eventually. But I have studied your history. I know what humans do when they are pushed too far. What do we do? Webb asked. You push back, the alien said, harder than anyone expects. And you do not stop until your enemies are defeated or dead. Webb considered this. And you want to help us? I want to survive, the alien admitted. And I believe the only way to survive is to make sure humanity wins. It was the first Valkyrie defection. It would not be the last. As the third year of the war began, the coalition controlled more territory than humanity had ever dreamed of owning. Former slaves fought beside human soldiers. Former enemies shared meals and stories. The galaxy was transforming. And in his throne room, High Arbiter Zythrin sat alone, surrounded by maps showing everything he had lost. He had wanted to make humanity an example. Instead, humanity had made an example of him. The fifth year of the war began with humanity on the attack. Coalition forces pushed deeper into Dominion territory every week. Worlds that had been under Valkyrie control for centuries were liberated one by one. The slaves who had served in fear for generations now rose up to help their rescuers. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UCS Defiance, watching another enemy fleet burn. She was older now. Gray had spread through her black hair. Lines had appeared around her eyes, but her spirit was unchanged. "Set course for the next system," she ordered. "We stop when we reach Velkar Prime." The Dominion homeworld. The center of an empire that had ruled for 3,000 years. The place where High Arbiter Zythrin sat on his throne, watching his civilization collapse. Marcus Webb commanded the ground forces now. He had become a symbol of human determination, a man who had fought in 100 battles and survived them all. But the war had changed him. He had seen too much death. He had caused too much death. One night before a major assault, he sat alone in his quarters looking at photographs. Pictures of colonies the Valkyrie had burned. Pictures of friends he had lost. Pictures of enemies he had killed. Dr. Elena Vasquez found him there. She had aged too, her brilliant mind now focused on weapons instead of stars. She sat beside him without speaking. "Sometimes I wonder what we have become," Webb said quietly. "We started this war as victims. Now we are conquerors. We have killed millions of them." "They killed billions of us first," Vasquez replied. "I know, but does that make it right?" He looked at her. "When this war ends, what will we be? Heroes or monsters?" Vasquez did not have an answer. The march toward Velkar Prime continued. Each battle brought the coalition closer to victory. Each battle added more names to the list of the dead. Humans, Kreth, Yelani, Valkyrie. They all bled the same when they died. High Arbiter Zythrin made his final stand at the Crimson Nebula. He gathered every ship the Dominion had left, thousands of vessels carrying millions of soldiers, and waited for the coalition fleet. "This is where we end them," he told his officers. "This is where we prove that the Dominion cannot be defeated." But his words sounded hollow even to himself. He had been saying similar things for years. Each time the humans proved him wrong. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula was the largest space battle in the history of the galaxy. Ships filled the void for millions of kilometers in every direction. The fighting lasted for 3 days without pause. Explosions lit up the nebula like stars being born and dying all at once. Admiral Tanaka commanded from the center of the coalition formation. She had studied Zythrin for years. She knew how he thought, how he fought, how he made decisions. She used that knowledge against him. "He expects us to attack the center," she told her officers. "He has placed his strongest ships there. So we will ignore the center, attack the flanks, cut his fleet in half, isolate him." The strategy worked. Valkyrie ships, trained for centuries to hold formation, could not adapt when that formation was broken. Coalition forces tore through their lines, dividing the enemy fleet into smaller groups that could be destroyed one by one. Zythrin watched his final army being torn apart. He ordered a retreat, but there was nowhere to retreat to. Coalition ships blocked every escape route. His empire, his fleet, his entire world was crumbling around him. "High Arbiter," his aide said, "we should surrender. The battle is lost." Zythrin considered this for a long moment. 3,000 years of Dominion history, 212 conquered species, his entire life dedicated to maintaining power through fear. "No," he said finally, "we do not surrender. We have never surrendered." "Then we will die." "Perhaps." Zythrin looked out at the chaos of battle. "But I will die as I lived, as a ruler, not a slave." But fate had other plans. Coalition Marines boarded his flagship. They fought through corridor after corridor, room after room, until they reached the bridge. When the doors opened, they found Zythrin standing alone, surrounded by the bodies of his guards. He looked at the human soldiers, pointing weapons at him. For a moment, he considered fighting. Then he lowered his head. "I am High Arbiter Zathran," he said. "I surrender my person, though not my pride." Marcus Webb was the one who took him prisoner. He looked at the alien who had ordered the deaths of billions of humans and felt something unexpected. Pity. "Take him to the holding cells," Webb ordered. "He will stand trial for his crimes." The war was not quite over. Fighting continued on dozens of worlds, but everyone knew the outcome now. The Dominion was finished. The question that remained was what would come next. The coalition gathered to decide Zithran's fate and the fate of the Velkari people. Representatives from every allied species sat in a great hall on Earth. Many of them had suffered under Dominion rule for centuries. Many of them wanted revenge. "They should be destroyed," said a Kreth representative, her insectoid body trembling with rage. "Every last one of them. They showed no mercy to us. Why should we show mercy to them?" Murmurs of agreement spread through the hall. The Velkari had caused unimaginable suffering. Justice demanded payment. But Admiral Tanaka stood and raised her hand for silence. "We have won this war," she said. "We have proven that we cannot be conquered. The question now is, what kind of victors will we be?" She looked around the room at faces filled with anger and pain. "If we destroy the Velkari, we become what they were. We become conquerors who rule through fear and death. Is that what we fought for? Is that the future we want?" The hall was quiet. "They killed my parents," someone shouted. "They burned my homeworld. They deserve to die." "Perhaps they do," Tanaka replied, "but killing them will not bring back the dead. It will only add more death to a galaxy that has seen too much already." Dr. Vasquez stood to support her. "We are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for everyone who comes after us. What we do now will define what the galaxy becomes. We can choose revenge, or we can choose something better." The debate lasted for days. Emotions ran high. Old wounds were reopened, but in the end, humanity's voice was decisive. Humans had started this coalition. Humans would determine its principles. The vote was close, but the decision was made. The Velkari would not be destroyed. They would be held accountable. They would pay for their crimes, but they would be given a chance to rebuild, to change, to become part of the new galactic order instead of its enemy. Zithran was brought before the Coalition Council to hear his sentence. He expected death. He had given death to so many. It seemed only fair that he receive it in return. Instead, a human representative approached him. She was young, born after the war began, growing up in a universe of conflict. "High Arbiter Zithran," she said, "you have been judged by the Coalition of Free Worlds. You are guilty of crimes beyond counting. The suffering you cause can never be fully measured." Zithran stood straight, accepting what was to come. "But we have decided that more death will not heal the galaxy. We have decided that mercy is stronger than revenge." Zithran's black eyes widened in confusion. "You will live," the representative continued. "You will watch as the galaxy you ruled is transformed into something better. You will speak to every new species we discover and tell them what happens when power is used to enslave rather than uplift." She stepped closer to him. "Your punishment is not death, High Arbiter. Your punishment is to see everything you built replaced by something greater. Your punishment is to know that you were wrong." Zithran stood in silence for a long moment. He had expected anger. He had expected violence. He had not expected this. "Why?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. The human representative smiled sadly. "Because we are not you. That is what you never understood about us. We do not just want to win, we want to build, and we cannot build a better future on a foundation of hatred." For the first time in his 3,000 years of life, High Arbiter Zithran felt something he had never felt before. Shame. 20 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have imagined when those first Velkari ships darkened Earth's sky. The Galactic Commonwealth now connected thousands of worlds. Former slaves governed themselves for the first time in centuries. Former enemies worked together in markets and laboratories and government chambers. The old ways of conquest and domination were not forgotten, but they were no longer practiced. The principles of the Commonwealth were simple. No species would kneel to another, all voices would be heard, and strength would be used to protect rather than to oppress. These principles were carved into monuments across 1,000 worlds, a reminder of what had been fought for and what had been won. Admiral Yuki Tanaka, now in her 80s, attended the dedication of the Reconciliation Monument on Earth. It was a massive structure of light and crystal floating above the ruins of old Tokyo, which had been destroyed in the war. Names were carved into its surface, not just human names, names from every species that had fought and died. Tanaka walked slowly, her body weakened by age but her mind still sharp. She read the names as she passed, friends, enemies, people she had ordered to their deaths. People who had died to save her. 40 billion. That was the estimated death toll of the war across all species. The number was too large to truly understand. It was easier to focus on individual names, individual stories, individual lives that had ended too soon. Dr. Elena Vasquez was there too, using a walking stick now but still working. She had returned to studying stars after the war, finding peace in the same science that had once seemed so far away. "Do you ever regret it?" Tanaka asked her old friend. "The choices we made, the weapons we built." Vasquez considered the question carefully. "I regret that they were necessary. I do not regret that we survived." Some would say we did more than survive. We conquered. No, Vasquez shook her head firmly. Conquerors take. We freed. There is a difference. Tanaka hoped she was right. Across the galaxy, High Arbiter Zathran continued his sentence. He traveled from world to world, speaking to anyone who would listen. His message was always the same. A warning about the dangers of power without compassion, strength without wisdom. He had aged badly in 20 years. His gray skin had become wrinkled and thin. His black eyes had lost their coldness, replaced by something that looked almost like regret. The mighty ruler who had commanded fleets and conquered worlds was now just a tired old creature carrying the weight of his crimes. Young species, newly contacted by the Commonwealth, would gather to hear him speak. They would look at this ancient alien and try to understand how someone could cause so much suffering. "I ordered them to kneel," Zithran would say, his voice weak but clear. "I expected them to obey, as everyone always had. When they refused, I tried to destroy them. I thought they were foolish. I thought they were weak." He would pause, letting the words sink in. "I was wrong. Their refusal to kneel was not weakness, it was strength. Their willingness to fight for freedom was not foolishness, it was wisdom. I spent 3,000 years building an empire of fear. They built something greater in less than 20 years." After each speech, young beings would approach him with questions. Some were angry, descendants of species he had conquered. Some were curious, wanting to understand the mind of a tyrant. A few, surprisingly, offered forgiveness. Human diplomats often accompanied him on these journeys. One of them, a young woman named Sarah Chen, had become something like a companion to him. Her grandmother had died when the Velkari burned her colony. By all rights, she should have hated Zithran. Instead, she chose to understand him. "Why do you keep doing this?" she asked him one night as they traveled between star systems. "You could retire. You could spend your remaining years in peace." Zithran looked out at the stars. "Because I deserve to carry this burden. Because my words might prevent some young fool from making the same mistakes I did." He paused. "And because your people gave me the chance to try. I never gave that chance to anyone." The Commonwealth continued to grow. New species were discovered in distant regions of space. The old pattern would have been conquest, arrive with overwhelming force, demand submission, add another slave race to the empire. The new pattern was different. First contact teams included members from every Commonwealth species. They came with offers of trade, knowledge, and friendship. They explained the galaxy's history honestly, including the war and the atrocities that had come before. They made clear that no one would be forced to join, that the choice was always free. Most species joined willingly. Why wouldn't they? The Commonwealth offered protection, technology, and the freedom to develop as they chose. It was a better offer than any galactic power had ever made before, But not everyone welcomed the changes. Deep in unexplored space, sensors detected something unexpected. A fleet of ships larger than anything the Commonwealth had ever built. They came from beyond the galactic rim, from regions that had been considered empty and lifeless. The new species called themselves the Eternal Chorus. They had been watching the galaxy for millennia, observing the rise and fall of empires, waiting for something specific. When they finally made contact, they chose to speak with humanity first. "We have watched your war," their ambassador said. The Eternal Chorus communicated through patterns of light and sound, creating something like music when they spoke. "We have watched many wars in many galaxies." Admiral Tanaka, despite her age, insisted on being present for first contact. "What did you see?" she asked. "We saw what we always see. One species conquering another, empires rising and falling, the strong dominating the weak." The ambassador's lights flickered in something like a smile. "But then we saw something new. We saw the weak become strong. We saw the conquerors shown mercy. We saw enemies become allies." "Why does that matter to you?" "Because we have searched for millions of years for species capable of growth. Most species that gain power use it to dominate others. When they are dominated in turn, they seek revenge. The cycle continues forever." The ambassador's lights became brighter. "But your species broke the cycle. You were victims who refused to be victims. Then you were conquerors who refused to conquer. You proved that power can be used differently." Tanaka considered this. "We are not perfect. We made many mistakes during the war. We killed when we could have found other ways." "Yes, but you learned. You grew. You became better than you were." The lights danced with what seemed like joy. "That is all we have ever asked for. Not perfection, but progress. Not saints, but beings capable of change." The Eternal Chorus offered to share their knowledge with the Commonwealth. Technology that could reshape worlds. Medicine that could extend life for centuries. Understanding of the universe that humanity could not have discovered alone. "Why?" Tanaka asked. "What do you want in return?" "We want you to continue. Continue growing. Continue learning. Continue proving that the cycle of violence can be broken." The ambassador's light softened. "And perhaps, when you are ready, help other galaxies find the same path." It was an offer beyond anything humanity had dreamed of. Partnership with beings who had watched stars being born. Access to secrets that could transform the Commonwealth into something unimaginable. Tanaka accepted, speaking for all of humanity in the coalition they had built. Years later, when Zithran lay dying in a hospital on Earth, Sarah Chen sat beside him. She held his clawed hand as his breathing became shallow and slow. "I have lived too long," he whispered. 3,000 years of cruelty. 20 years of trying to make amends. It is not enough." "Maybe not," Sarah replied gently. "But it is something." Zithran's black eyes looked up at her. "Your grandmother, the one who died. Do you think she would forgive me?" Sarah considered the question honestly. "I do not know. I hope so. I think forgiveness is what she would have wanted." "How can you be sure?" "Because she raised my mother to be kind, and my mother raised me to sit here with you now." Sarah squeezed his hand. "The hatred could have continued through generations. Instead, there is this. Two people from species that should be enemies, sharing a moment of peace." Zithran closed his eyes. "I ordered your people to kneel. You taught me to stand." They were his last words. The monument built in his memory was placed beside the Reconciliation Monument on Earth. It bore a simple inscription. He learned. Let all who see this learn too. And on old Earth, in a garden planted where bombs had once fallen, a larger monument stood. Children from a dozen species played around its base, their laughter mixing together in the warm sunlight. They did not fully understand the words carved into the stone, but someday they would. They demanded we kneel. We chose to stand. And in standing, we lifted the galaxy with us. The future stretched out before them, bright with possibility. The cycle had been broken. The old ways were dying. And humanity, the species that had refused to kneel, walked forward into a new dawn, carrying all the galaxy with them.